So from what I hear about Lang Leav, she lives in New Zealand on a little house by the sea with her partner. And I'm over here questioning why she's living my best life without me. I'm confused and highly jealous, by the way. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Anna, and first, just an apology for not having a video up last week as per my National Poetry Month video schedule. It was a really rough week and I had finals and I got sick, and so yeah, it just wasn't pretty all around, but I'm definitely gonna have this video out before May so that I can squeeze it in for our National Poetry Month. So without further ado, let's get into our video. Today I have a really great book for you guys, and I'm sure you already know what it is because of the title of this video. It's so funny, I always film this without thinking that, oh yeah, I'm gonna tell them the title, and they already know, like, as I'm like trying to mysteriously divulge this book. So as you know, we're doing a Lang Leav book today. Lang Leav is such an amazing poet, and I really enjoy her work. She has this air of mystery. She's a very ethereal writer, and there are just so many emotions that she evokes that with such simplicity that I don't understand how she does it, but yet it's amazing and it works. And so today we're going to be talking about Lullabies by Lang Leav. This book is definitely my favorite Lang Leav book so far. I've read 3, with this being one of them, and out of the 3, this has definitely been the most enjoyable, the most heart-wrenching, the most creative in my mind from her so far. I have 2 more currently that I own that I need to read from her before I can definitely say that in my opinion. But so far, this has been my favorite, most beloved Lang Leav book, and so today we're going to talk about it. So without further ado, let's get started. So this poetry book is broken up into 3 sections. We have chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3. Each chapter is named duet, interlude, and finale. There is also one very small section at the end called encore, which is like excerpts from her poetry book called Love and Misadventure. I guess it's like a teaser almost, although from what I understand, Love and Misadventure was her first poetry book, so maybe it's like a way to remind people of like something that she's done in the past. There are a total of 113 poems, if I did add or did math correctly. And the inspiration was from a poem called Lost Words by Michael Faudet, and it's basically about the idea of unmade books being like in your mind and how you get them out of your mind and like onto the page. And she said that really inspired her. She has like a whole introduction on it, so it's really like interesting to see what inspires authors. I really love hearing how just different things inspire different people. Like for this channel, it was inspired not only by other booktubers on YouTube, but it was also inspired by a book about poetry and how poetry helped this character get through her mental illness and brought her closer to people that she really loved. So that was my inspiration for this channel, and Lang Leav's inspiration for her book was the poem Lost Words. So we're just gonna get right into the first section, duet. I have about 5 favorite poems from this section. It was really hard to choose, and they're definitely not in the order of like most favorite to least favorite. It's just favorite that I really liked and that really stuck out to me. They are titled Messages, Clocks, and or Sad Things, and If My Life Were a Day. These poems really do talk about things that I know I think and feel and go through, and I think a lot of us do as well. So one of them talks about the idea of messages in a bottle, like that idea where you find like on the ocean those bottles with like the old messages in it. The idea that like she connects messages and people and purpose in this poem. So the message always has a purpose, even if it doesn't reach the intended recipient. And so that really stuck out to me, because sometimes a lot of people feel like I want to tell like this person this, or I want to inspire this group of people to do this. And it's like, well, your message is the most important thing, and even though it may not reach the people that you want it to reach, it will always reach someone, and that's what its purpose is. And I really liked that. It sort of gives a lot of freedom for the artist who's creating the message, because I think a lot of times we feel like we have to influence people in like stages where we try to attempt to influence maybe the most powerful or the most famous or, you know, talented person, and we often kind of skip over the people who we don't consider as important, whereas those people may be the ones who need the message more. Yeah, so I liked that one. She also talks a lot about time. In fact, there's literally a poem on the back entitled Time. Her poems on time are really interesting, and how she views time, she personifies it sometimes. She talks about how it influences relationships sometimes. And so in the poem titled Clocks, so I'm just going to read it because I think it says, it encapsulates its own like feeling within the words, and there's no way that I could like sum that up. So it says, "Here in time you are mine, my heart has not sung louder. I do not know why I love you so, the clock knows not its hour. Yet it is clear to all that's here that time is told by seeing, even though clocks do not know its reason for their being." Yeah, when I read that, every stanza to me got better. The message of the poem like really struck me. And so I was thinking that it almost sounds as if, just like clocks, we sometimes don't know why we love a person or a thing, but we do love it very much, and it really inspires us. Even though the clock in and of itself doesn't know why it is a clock, because it's inanimate, I guess, but also just because in the sense of time, it doesn't know that it's telling time. It does, in fact, tell time. So that way, I guess you could equate it to the fact that sometimes we don't know why we like something or someone or love a person, but yet we do. And so that was really interesting. It's almost like the inevitableness, that's the word, the inevitableness of love, and like you may not always know why, but it's always going to be something that you feel. Sad things really hit me hard because the very thing that she describes that she does when she writes is something that I do as well. The last line of Sad Things says, "When I write sad things, I'm writing for the future." And I do that too. And I've explained it to myself in that, like, if that sad thing ever comes to pass, I will have already lived through it because I wrote about it. And so it's kind of a stupid way of like trying to prepare for something that you have no way of preparing for. But it was so interesting to see that I'm not the only one that does that. I really like when I find connections that are like really minuscule, but I find like myself in the poetry. I really enjoy when that happens. It makes me feel like I'm not the only one that does certain things. So if I had to summarize chapter 1, Duet, it would definitely be the beginning of love, the beginning of things that we go through, how things begin, just basically like new feelings and like the remembrances of old feelings. So things that have happened in the past that we remember, maybe we bring back to memory as we begin something new. Yeah, just like the beginning of love as well. Although this book does talk a lot about love, I don't feel like it's solely about love. She does have a lot of things in there that don't relate immediately to love, although a lot of it does. So yeah, it would definitely be the beginning of new things. So Interlude, which is the second chapter of this book, and it's also the smallest chapter. It's only about, I would say, 10 to 12 pages long. These typically seem like stories. They're written in the form of poems, but they seem more narrative. And so there's one specific one that I liked that is titled The Professor, and definitely alludes to Frankenstein, to the idea of a monster, which, as you guys know, really interests me. When I read it, I couldn't tell if it was about Victor Frankenstein or the monster. It definitely was talking about a more monster-like figure, and how he and this woman, who I'm assuming is either his wife or lover, they like go exploring and they research things and they learn things, and they have a son apparently that comes on the weekends, and that part I didn't really get, but they spend time together, and it's just like a really lovely story, like set in poetry, and it was like really interesting. Another interesting thing about Interlude is that this section has a lot of poetic stories that seem to be about incidents that maybe have happened to her. I'm not really sure what they're about, like who they're about, and I don't even know if that's important. They are a little R-rated, so they do discuss sex. And so I almost felt like it was an interesting turn from sort of like the innocent, sweet poems that we had before to now more like rough sexual stories, although they're still like pretty tastefully done. So I wasn't sure if that was just like an interesting turn. Maybe that's why she said interlude, to give like a space for that content. And so it was really interesting to see that. It was almost a bit of a shock after reading the really sweet poems about like the beginnings of love. Maybe this would be like where people get a little frisky, a little, a little naughty, you could say. So that could be part of it. It could also just be things that have happened in her life. Some of them, I wasn't sure if she was expressing those encounters in a positive way or a negative way. And so that's definitely something I'd have to reread to figure out. And even then, I may not be able to figure that out. Okay, so our last section, finale, is the longest section. It basically takes up the next half of the book. And so there are tons of poems in this section that I love and that are beautiful, and they express so many different ideas that I feel, but I didn't realize could be expressed in words, if that makes sense. So we have poems like Acceptance, Broken Hearts, Dead Poets, Concentric Circles, Two Fishermen, Shipwrecks, The Very Thing, Beach Ball, one of my favorites, Poker Face, another one where she calls me out, Crosswords. So some of the poems I feel are like fables, which in my mind are like little stories that talk about or represent like this big idea. So one of them, called Two Fishermen, was about these two fishermen, and one fishes for all of the fish in the sea, and the other fishes for one fish in the sea, and therefore none of the other fish hold any interest to him. And so it was like the difference between wanting everything and then wanting one thing that means everything. And I was like, that's actually a really interesting way of putting it. And it's even more interesting because of the phrase that we use, there's a lot of fish in the sea, in regards to relationships. And like, well, if she wasn't the one or if he wasn't the one, there are more fish in the sea. For some people, they fish for all of the fish in the sea, like the world is their oyster in that sense. And for other people, they're really only searching for one that will mean everything to them. And so I thought that was a really cool analogy, the way that she put that. That was like a pleasant surprise of a little bit of poetry, a little bit of prose. This section has a lot to do with loss, with patience, confusion, time, pain, those kind of emotions, nostalgia, melancholy. Also, because this is the last section of the book, we inevitably move towards the end of relationships. Often when they end, when people fall out of love, when they break up because they're no longer compatible. And so the loss, the grief that goes along with that, the confusion, the lack of closure, all of those things that go into the end of relationships. And she manages to just express those small, very specific emotions that we feel that impact us in such a big way. They not only impact us in the moment that we feel those emotions, they impact us in the future, in how we deal in future relationships. You know, we may get hurt in this one relationship, and we may have made so many mistakes in that one relationship, and then we meet this person who is amazing, and they seem to be the person that we're meant to be with, but we feel so damaged from all of these past relationships that we are not in a place of being able to accept this new amazing person, and like the regret that kind of comes along with that. I know she has one poem that states that she wishes that she had made mistakes with a different person because she had such a good person with her, and she made those mistakes with that good person, and the relationship ended, and she wishes that she had made those mistakes with a different person so that she could have learned from that and been ready for this person. And I was like, wow, that is so specifically true. How we make mistakes, and the mistakes we make with certain people, we kind of wish we didn't make them with those people. It's really interesting. I don't want to get too much into it, partly because I don't want to spoil anything. I'm in this season of Game of Thrones and Marvel movies and Star Wars, all three franchises that are ending, in the season of that, I have been really against spoilers, myself being spoiled and also me spoiling other people. And I know it's a simple poetry book and that it's not like a plot-driven storyline or anything, but I still don't want to spoil everything for you guys in this book. It was an amazing book. Also, a really cool thing is that there's a little artwork in there, also done by Lang Leav. So Miss Lang Leav is a poet of many talents because she is able to draw very well. And at the beginning of every chapter, there is a drawing that she has done, I guess, to represent the different stages of the book. So this book is also pretty long, as I'm sure you can see, pretty thick. That's not a problem for me, but it may be a problem for some people who like poetry collections to be short and sweet. I will say, however, that while it does seem long, there are only poems on every other page, which means that most of the time the opposite page is blank. So there really is, while it may be 200 pages, there's really only writings on about half of it. Which for me was a little disappointing because I love her work and I always would love more, but I guess for a lot of people it would be, you know, easier to read that way. Well, that is it for my video today, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your April. It is almost over and May is almost here. If you have any comments, any suggestions for me to talk about, any book suggestions that you want to give, any comments about Lang Leav and her books and her poetry, please feel free to do so. I love hearing from you guys. Also, don't forget to follow me on Instagram, where I post a lot of different things about poetry, poetry that I'm reading, poetry that I've written. Yeah, so don't forget to follow me, and I will see you in my next video in May. Bye.